Hello, it is Sunday, August 4th, 2024. I read a good chunk of books this past week, so let's talk about them. Let's get you out of the way. Come on, this chair's always in my way. All right, so the first book I read this past week, I read Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. This is my first time reading this book. It came out in about 2011, and it was kind of been a little bit of a cult classic. Libba Bray got very popular for her Diviner series, and when she got very popular for those, people then retroactively went back and looked at other stuff. And so Beauty Queens is a satirical novel following a group of beauty queens who crash land on a deserted island. And it has frequently been compared to Lord of the Flies. It's been like a girl Lord of the Flies situation. But it is trying to do different things than Lord of the Flies was, because this is really more like anti-capitalist, anti-patriarchy kind of stuff. And Lord of the Flies was about don't British schoolboys suck. But no, it was genuinely funny at points. It did feel very 2011 at points, but I still watch Dan and Phil, so I can jive with the millennial humor. But no, it was interesting. There was a lot of representation, especially for a book from 2011. One of the beauty queens transgender. One of them's a lesbian, and it was a lot. It said a lot, and it said a lot in a way that was very kind of amusing, and it was fun. And I do think every single book I've read by Libba Bray, I've enjoyed. She is definitely a very solid, talented writer, and I am giving this 5 out of 5 stars. All right, then I reread one of my childhood Goosebumps books. That is Bad Hair Day by R.L. Stine. All right, so Bad Hair Day. I actually never had the original edition. Now I do. I'm very happy about it, but I had the like late 90s, early 2000s ones, where they kept the good cover art, but then it was all like a solid color. I'll show you an example later because I have another one of those in the stack here too. But this follows this kid, Tim. And he's got a little sister who knows karate, and she just spends all of her time just beating him up. But he really likes magic, and so he ends up being able to go to this magic show, and he steals the magician's magic kit and then turns his little sister into a rabbit. This book is very slow, and like objectively speaking, I know it's not very good. Objectively speaking, are any Goosebumps books very good? No. But this one does have a really big nostalgia beat for me, just because this was one that I owned as a kid, and this was one that I read several times. And so based on that alone, I'd give it 5 out of 5 stars because it's about nostalgia. All right, now we're going into some that were not as good. So this first one, got the first volume of Noblesse by Jae Ho-sun and Kwang Soo Lee, which was a webtoon. So I actually watched the first episode of the anime adaptation when I still had Crunchyroll, and I thought it was fine. It was kind of fun. This was dull. So what this does is this follows this school, and this guy, he's a vampire, but you don't really know what's going on. Actually, it doesn't do a good job of explaining to you what's going on. And there are these guys who are trying to kill him and stuff, and there's vampires. It was just dull. It was dull, and it didn't make much sense. The art style is typical but cute enough. I wish that what they had spent more time on was like getting him kind of acclimated to modern life, because there was a part in here where he's just so disturbed because he was so bad at video games. I thought that was fun. I thought that was endearing. I thought that was cute, and I wish we would have done more of that, but it didn't. It was just like, and now there's this guy here killing people, and I'm like, but can we see this guy try to play video games again? I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. It wasn't the worst thing ever, but it just, like I said, like it just wasn't interesting. And it just didn't make much sense. So, all right, then I read a John Saul book, which was actually pretty fun, and that is Perfect Nightmare by John Saul. So what this is this follows this woman, and her husband, their marriage is not going well, because he works in the city, and they live, like, I believe in like some kind of suburb of New York, sort of, and it's, or I don't know, maybe they're just in different parts of New York. I don't really know. I used to have a writing friend who lived in New York City. I don't understand how New York is set up. But either way, they live in different areas. So he works in a different area that they live in. So he has like this tiny little apartment around where he works. And it's not good for their marriage, and they can't really afford it. So like, all right, we're just going to move. However, there's a like serial kidnapper, it appears, as people are starting to realize, that really uses open houses to kind of scope out their next victims. And the serial kidnapper has kind of landed on their teenage daughter. And I will say, John Saul. So I've read a number of books by John Saul. Yes, I have read stuff for the children. And this one does have a scene that is reminiscent of Suffer the Children. It's not as bad as the cat scene, but it's along the same lines. So if you read Suffer the Children and that scene was bad for you, like to a point where you can't get over it, don't read this one, because it does have another similar thing. And I don't want to like start talking about it, but it's like, if you read the cat scene and it negatively affected you to the point where you don't think you could handle something similar to that. Now, I don't know if I would say it's quite as bad. There's no cat involved, but it's along the same lines. And if you can't handle that, then stay away from Perfect Nightmare. So the twist at the end, like, I kind of saw it coming, but it didn't really make a lot of sense, because I was like, I bet it's gonna be this guy, but that wouldn't make sense because of this, this, and this. But then it was that guy. I'm like, okay, well, I that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But it was a fun twist. I think the why of the twist was more interesting, because why this character was doing this is because he was, it's we know it's a man. He was like abused by his older sister when he was a kid, and we meet the sister, and it's just like, I kind of maybe gave it away. I don't know if anybody's going out to look for Johns. I don't know. You'll forget. We meet her, and it's like that was, I think, more interesting to me than the twist itself. I did think it was hilarious how they there's this one man that was kind of a pretty big suspect for a while, but he's just, sorry, I had a, ooh, eBay new bids. Look at that. I'm selling manga. There was this man that was a pretty big suspect. It was like, he's just probably autistic. It was kind of funny. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Definitely one of the better John Saul books I've read. His books are very hit or miss. I really liked Creature when I was growing up, but I've also read like the Manhattan Hunt Club, which was fine. Suffer the Children was a lot. This is, I think, Suffer the Children, really, he burst onto the scene with Suffer the Children, and he never quite reached that again. But yes, all right. Then I read some literary fiction. I know, who am I? Jillian by Hallie Butler. So this is about these depressed women. That's what this is. This is about depressed women in the city. And so we've got this like woman in her early 20s and a woman in her mid 30s, and they both work as like receptionists in this doctor's office. And the woman in her early 20s, Megan, she is just so depressed, and she's clearly depressed, and she's an alcoholic, and she's driving all of her friends and her boyfriend away. And Jillian is this like painful optimist who really just, whenever something bad happens, she just like compartmentalizes it and forgets about it. And this kind of all comes to a head when she says, I need to get a dog. And it's just about them being depressed, really. And I could appreciate it for what it is, and I think that this is a book that could be very important to a lot of people. It was personally not super relatable. I thought it was entertaining enough in the way that, like, listening to your coworkers gossip is entertaining. I'm an elementary teacher now, and I really love it because there's so much more gossip than in the high school. I don't ever get personally involved, but I know everything because I just like to talk to everybody. I just like listen to people about it. And that's kind of what this felt like. So it was written well. I could appreciate it, but personally it didn't quite connect with me. I give it 3.75 out of 5 stars. All right. Then I read Little Sip of Sin by Cleo Evans. So this is a monster fucker book. I previously had read Little Shock of Hate, which was a different one. This one is Dragon. There's a lot in this. This one has vor, which I was not like prepared for. So quick synop, I guess. Two male dragon shifters and a human woman. I give it 2 out of 5 stars. There was a lot there, and I think it was, as a side note, I do think it was weird that they tried to like shoehorn in a plot at the end. Like, you know, we're not reading this for the plot, Cleo. All right. On a complete opposite end of the spectrum, The Breadwinner Trilogy by Deborah Ellis, which is about children in Afghanistan during the war. It's fucking harrowing. Oh my god. Okay, so this is technically 3 separate books. I believe the first one, let's see when it was published. So the first one is The Breadwinner, which was actually made into a movie, I believe in like 2018 or something like that, an animated movie, which I would love to watch. It'd probably be very depressing. So The Breadwinner was published in 2000, Parvana's Journey in 2002, and Mud City in 2003. And so this follows, the first 2 books follow this girl named Parvana, who ends up having to, she dresses as a boy so that she can earn money for her family, because she's getting to that age where she really can't be outside on her own with the Taliban there and everything, because she's like a preteen. And so she dresses as a boy so she can make money. And when she's there, she does meet this other girl who's doing the same thing, and that is who we follow with the third book. And so she ends up, and she's making money, their father gets arrested, and her family goes to a city that they think is safer. And so her father ends up getting released from prison, and she's like, okay, I gotta go find my family. And that's what the second book is about. And the second book starts with her father's funeral. So she is on her own. She's like 12 years old. She's dressed as a boy. Probably the malnutrition is working in her favor here, because she's not really developing, which is good for her. And she just collects orphans. And then in Mud City, we follow her friend, who's also a girl dressing as a boy. And this is what's her name? Shozia. And Shozia is actually, she's in Pakistan. She made it out of Afghanistan. And she's in a refugee camp, but she's got this really big dream. She wants to go to France, and she wants to sit in a lavender field. And that is her big dream. Like, that is what she wants. She wants to sit there, and she wants to be free. And it's really, these books are a lot. Neither of the stories really get a solid ending. Like, we don't get like, and then they lived happily ever after, because these are children in war-torn countries, and a lot of the times they don't get a lot of a happily ever after. They made a pact when they were both working as T-boys, that they would, in 20 years, they would meet on the top of the Eiffel Tower. And I think it would have been like kind of pandery for Ellis to write as an epilogue where they met at the top of the Eiffel Tower when they were like in their 30s. But I would have really liked it. You know, it's a very emotional book. It's a very emotional set of books. And this is a middle grade series. So it's not super explicit about a lot of things. Like, there's this scene where Shozia is dressed as a boy, and she's earning money in Pakistan just because it's easier for her to earn money as a boy at this point. And she just feels like she has more freedom. And there's a guy who gives her $100, not $100, but the equivalent of $100. And she takes it, and he's like, you earn some more money like that? And he starts like dragging her away. And as an adult, I knew what was going on. It doesn't ever spell it out. Obviously, it's for you know, people who are about the age of these children. But it's like, you know, as adults know what's going on. And she got away, but it's still just like, jeez. No, it was very good. This is like a children's modern classic at this point, and it is, I understand why. All right. Then a little bit lighter. Beware the Snowman. And these are the editions that were coming out when I was growing up. So we still have the classic artwork in the middle, but we have like just one color. So I'm not collecting these ones, but they're better than the new editions. All I'm gonna say here. So Beware the Snowman was another one. Like, it's a pretty high nostalgia rating for me, because this was another one that I had a copy of as a kid, and that I read over and over and over again. And so this one follows this girl who has been living with her aunt in Chicago for pretty much her whole life. Her dad is just nowhere to be found. Her mom died when she was 4. And so she's just been living in Chicago, but her aunt decides to move her up to the Arctic Circle for some reason. And so she goes up there, and one thing that I think this book does really well, and this could just be because I did grow up in North Dakota where it's so cold all the time. Not all the time. In the summer it gets pretty hot, but in the winter we get, you know, blizzards, all sorts of snow. Is that the winter in here was just very, very visceral, and I did really like that. But anyway, I didn't finish talking about the plot. So in this weird little town, there are all these identical snowmen. They're all kind of creepy looking, and there's like an evil snowman that lives on the mountain. And it's really stupid. This is honestly a really stupid plot. And there's a really stupid stuff going on here, but the atmosphere of this book is kind of insane and kind of fire, and I give it 5 out of 5 stars, even though that's definitely just nostalgia rating. Anyway, then I read a book on my Kindle, and I actually got a real Kindle. So the only kind of Kindles I've ever had before are Kindle Fires, which are glorified tablets, and they suck. There's a reason they're $30. It's because they're bad. And so I had previously only read books either on that or on a Kindle app on my phone. And so I was like, I'm just gonna buy the bullet. I'm gonna get a paperweight because I heard that they're actually really good. And so I read this. This is my first book I read in the paperweight, and it was actually a really good reading experience. Are Kindles gonna ever replace this? no. It's like yeah, I sometimes watch movies on Amazon, but like I love my DVDs and stuff. And I do think there's still a difference. It's not as bad as reading something on your phone as on my phone, at least for me personally, but it is still, I mean, it's different, you know. But anyway, what did I read for my first Kindle read? The Dare by Harley LaRue. So I watched Reads with Rachel's video about it, and I was like, fuck it, I'm game. I'll read it. And I'm gonna say it was, yeah, no, it was pretty good. It is an erotica novella. It is like a prequel to like an erotica series that I do have in my wish list at this point, just because I'm kind of curious. I'm curious if the clown thing is gonna like become a bigger thing, or if it was just because it was a Halloween party. Because I don't know. But it's about this popular girl who ends up figuring some stuff out. But no, it was better than Little Sip of Sin. I'll say that. But no, I did read that on my Kindle, and I will probably be reading more on my Kindle. I have a whole situation with my TBR cart that I have figured out. So where I will be reading Kindle books in there. And that is that. These are the books I read this past week. That is all every day. I'll talk to you later, and goodbye.